Well, of course you know that when you come to closing, you're going to need your down payment and closing costs. But if this is your first time going through the home buying process, or maybe your second, you might not know, or you may have forgotten the other checks that you'll need to write after you go under contract before you get to the closing table and own your home. There are 6 of the most common upfront costs that if this is your first time going through the home buying process, you might not know about, and if it's your second time, you may have forgotten. Those include the option fee, the earnest money, your inspection costs, your appraisal, the survey, and the HOA docs. I'm going to make sure that you know what all of those are, how much they cost, and how much they affect you. So the first one is your option money. What that is the amount of money that you're giving the seller to buy yourself the unrestricted right to terminate the contract. You've written an offer on a house. What if you change your mind? What if you find your dream house tomorrow? What if there are inspection issues? What if you lose your job? You want an amount of time that you can back out, no harm, no foul. And that is your option period. You're buying yourself the option to move forward with the purchase or the option to back out. Now, that usually costs anywhere between $200 and $1,000. It depends on the home. It depends on the market that you're in. You're going to give that money to the title company. During that option period, which is, let's say, around a week, you get to do all of your inspections, all of your due diligence, anything to really help you feel comfortable moving forward. If you decide to go ahead and purchase the home, that option fee is credited to you at closing. If you decide to terminate, then the seller will receive those funds as compensation for taking their home off of the market and giving you access to do your inspections. So it's not a ton of money. You don't want to be writing offers that you're not serious about because nobody wants to lose a few $100s, but it is a really good way to give you the option and you the power as the buyer to decide to move forward or not. The second check that you're going to need to write is the earnest money deposit. That's also held by the title company in an escrow account. Think about it as you telling the seller that you are earnestly intending on purchasing the home. You're earnestly intending on following through with the terms of the contract. As a buyer, there are over 30 ways for you to back out of the contract and receive that deposit back. As a seller, you want the buyer to have as few of those outs as possible to secure the sale of your home. So it's all a negotiation. You want to make sure that you're working with your realtor so that you know all of the ways that you can get out of the contract as a buyer and all of the ways that you are locked in. Now, if you want to get out of the contract and you use one of the outlined ways that are already written, you can get that earnest money back. If you just don't handle your business and don't show up the day of closing or aren't signing the documents that need to be signed on time, then the seller does have the ability to keep that money. You want to make sure that you're working with a realtor who knows the contract in and out, who has a compliance department, who can make sure all of your I's are dotted, all of your T's are crossed, that you and your money are the most protected. The last thing that you want to do is lose this big deposit because of a silly mistake. Now, let's say that earnest money is 2% of the purchase price, okay? You were intending on putting 5% down for the purchase of the home. If you move forward with the contract and go ahead with the purchase, that 2% counts as part of that deposit. So now on the day of closing, you've already put down part of your down payment. You only need 3% more to close. So you see why it's really important to make sure that you don't lose that money. It can be a big chunk of change. The third expense that you're going to have as a buyer after you write an offer is for the inspections. I recommend that all of my buyers get a home inspection, even on a brand new home like this. Now, we're not looking for jiggly toilet handles, but we do want to know if there are any major surprises that are going to come up after you close, right? You want to make sure that there's not $30,000 in foundation work that you don't know about. An inspection costs somewhere between $400 and $600 depending on the size of the home. Now, where it can start to get more expensive if you start layering in an electrician to come out, a plumber to come out, a roofer to come out, a foundation specialist to come out, a plumbing scope person to come out, right? You can start really layering in a lot of different inspection costs that can go upwards of $1,000 or $1,200. I still think it's better to be safe or sorry, to get as many inspections as make you feel comfortable during that inspection, that option period, so that you know whether you're going to move forward or not. All right, the fourth expense that you're going to have as a buyer before you close is the appraisal fee. Now, the bank is going to order that appraisal, not you, but you still have to pay for it. Some lenders will pay for the appraisal up front and have you reimburse them as part of your closing costs. Some of them ask you to provide a credit card. So it really just depends on who you're working with and what their process is. Even if you've waived the appraisal contingency, and even if you've agreed to cover any gap between the appraisal and your purchase price, if you're getting a loan, you have to get an appraisal. Those are between $600 and $800. Now, it does protect you to have an appraisal because you want to make sure you're not buying a home that's worth less than what you've agreed to pay. But in reality, that appraisal is to protect the bank. They're definitely not going to lend you more money than the house is worth. All right, the fifth expense that you're going to have as a buyer or the seller is a survey. A survey is going to be required if you have a loan in order to get title insurance on your property. Now, hopefully the seller still has the survey from when they purchased the home. But if they've made any significant changes to the fence line, if they've added a pool or a shed or any additions, then you're going to have to get a new one. Someone has to pay for it. It could be the buyer, it could be the seller. It's totally negotiable in the contract, but a new one is going to be required. They cost between $500 and $700. So it's not a huge expense, but you are going to have to write that check. All right, number 6 is the HOA docs. This is 100% a seller cost. This is why it's important to order the HOA documents before you get a contract on your home. You know how I talked about that unrestricted right to terminate the contract that buyers have during their option period? Well, as a seller, when you provide those HOA documents to a buyer, they get an additional unrestricted right to terminate for a specific number of days that are outlined in the contract. So the last thing you want as a seller is to get all the way through this process and then the buyer has another way to get out of it. And you could have prevented that with paying $400 for these documents. Now, what's provided in the HOA documents are the resale certificate, any kind of restrictions, any kind of deed restrictions, anything happening in the community, you are required to give it to the buyer. So you might as well order it up front and provide it to the buyer whenever they write you an offer, instead of waiting 21 days and providing it and then letting them back out of the contract. If you like this video and you want to see more like it, be sure to like and follow me at JenK_real estate. As always, if you have any specific questions about your home buying process, reach out. I check my DMs all the time. So make sure to like and follow. I'll see you next time.